on going to Craters of the Moon to spend the night at the National Park campground. We get there and we find the campground's closed. So we'll just go right straight on into the cabin, up through Arco, Idaho. This was the first city in the United States to be powered by nuclear power. And the students from the high school have painted their graduation date on the mountain behind, and it's a very famous place for that. So we push on and we arrive at the cabin sometime about midnight, I guess it was. The cabin was fine. The only thing, the grass needed to be mowed, and the badgers have had a heyday digging holes around the lawn. There's a real nice big badger hole right off our front porch, right in the front lawn. And we have a few cactus on the lawn, and they're beginning to bloom really good right now. This badger hole's kinda under a rock, but boy, is it a big one, and it's been used a lot. We just got ready to paint that whole day, and the next day we'll paint, but that night Mother Nature put the sun away in a beautiful style right across the Wyoming range. We see a few little ground squirrels out in our lawn. I guess they figure that's their place. Since no one's there a lot of the time, they can roam freely. He looks as though he's eaten enough of those grass seeds. He's getting a pot belly on him, maybe a beer belly. The cabin was needing paint really bad, so we hurry and get all the windows and doors and everything taped on it so we can get on with it real soon. I've brought my airless sprayer from home, and we have a ladder over there, so I'm going to climb up, put the paper over the window, and get started spraying real soon now. I can stand on the porch roof and reach the upper part above the porch quite well, but then when I started spraying that oil stain on it, the oil got on the porch roof and it just got slicker than ice, and I went for a tumble, but I didn't quite fall off the roof. There were enough screw heads I was able to get a hold of them. Well, now I'm ready to go, and I'm starting to put a new coat of oil stain on the cabin. Within about 2 or 3 hours, once I got the windows taped, I was done with that job, and I'd been putting that off for a long time, and it went so easy and so good with this big airless sprayer. All the way around the house, I put this oil stain on, and it sure looked a lot better. I'd probably better not wait so long for the next time, though. And inside the cabin, it's still looking good. My springbuck and antelope head that I have mounted is there, and the cabinets I built are still in good shape, and the table and chairs are there, and then the fish that I mounted on the wall is still there, and the sculptures that Kent made for us. The fish sculptures add a touch of charm to this log cabin. Most of the interior walls of the cabin are log, but I did like the bathroom walls were just studded up like normal construction, and then I put fish fossils that we dug in a pit down by Kimmer, Wyoming, around on the chimney and also on some of the walls. Looks like Marge is making herself busy at doing a little cooking. She's cooking some of our bass from the Owyhee Canyon. She'll cook a whole bunch of 'em, and then we can eat 'em cold. They're good even cold. And after our job's done, the sun is once again setting over the Wyoming range. The cabin with its brand new coat of paint over everything outside is looking good for a very, very nice sunset. I stepped outside the cabin early that morning and I see we have a visitor. One of the buck antelope, and a nice big one, is standing there watching. We didn't see many antelope around the cabin, not as many as usual, but we did see quite a few down by Kimmer. I don't know whether they're just not there or we just weren't able to see them. And this old doe was with him, and I believe I saw her another time with a little fawn that she probably has stashed. She's one of the does that have fairly big horns. And the old buck looks on as the doe sneaks over closer and closer to get some of that nice tender grass around the cabin. You can tell the does from the buck. The doe has no black cheek patch. On the bucks, that black cheek patch is a gland. Within a few days, I have the lawn mowed and the cabin painted and some other things done around it, and so we're going to head out. Past the neighbor's replica of an Indian spirit house, and then south till we come to Soda Springs, Idaho. This is one of the spots where Free Bubble Up comes gurgling right out of the ground, and especially this being election year, I'm sure both parties claim that they're responsible for that. But there's a little pond here where it comes right out of the ground, and you can take your own containers and dip some of this naturally carbonated water out. And then you can mix like Kool-Aid or something like that in with it, and you won't be able to tell it from soda pop. Where they mine it nearby, part of the phosphorus they mine out of there is sold for agricultural purposes for phosphate, and then the rest of it is sold to Coca-Cola Corporation to make their soda pop bubbly. Marge is going to get her bottles full of this Free Bubble Up, and when you fill your bottles with this Free Bubble Up, you need to seal them up real tight or else it loses its carbonation. And some of the town toughies used to come here and party. They'd bring a jug of whiskey down and use this for their mixer. And they claimed it really worked good and it was a nice place for their parties. We came prepared with some grape Kool-Aid like stuff that we pour in to our Free Bubble Up, and then we'll make our own soda pop and drink a bunch of it too. I really loaded up on it. It was really good and fresh. But you shouldn't drink too much of this stuff because that phosphorus will leach the calcium out of your teeth and your bones in time. But where you just do it once every few years, it probably isn't that severe. I get my Free Bubble Up all made, shake it a little bit, and then it's ready to drink, and boy, is it good. And you really can't tell it from grape soda pop. The big phosphorus mine nearby, they're dumping their red-hot slag down over the hillside, as they've done for years and built this mountain of slag. That must be a pretty hot job, driving that truck down with that red-hot slag. They dump their load, and then they're out of there. We move on up to Twin Falls, Idaho, and then we go south to Wells, Nevada, and from Wells, Nevada, we go up a pretty good paved road for about 9 miles, and then we take a really pretty well rutted out, bumpy road for about 2 miles up till we get to a hot springs. And I'd highly recommend this hot springs. It was excellent. And if you can't make it up in your vehicle, it's only a 2-mile hike. It is a hot creek that flows down, and then the hot springs come out of the hillside in numerous places. We pass an old bridge that could no longer be crossed, and then there was an irrigation system there. I guess that was before they started using pumps and circular irrigation systems, and it looks like that irrigation ditch and the irrigation head gates are no longer used to this day. We get to the hot springs and go out and test the water, and even the creek is hot here, but the hot springs is just a little warmer than the creek, but yet not too hot, and it's very clear and a very nice rock bottom pool with the water coming right out of the hillside into it. Well, way back when, this looks like it might have been a resort or something, because they packed a lot of concrete and made this real long pool that's about 3 feet deep, and it's about 70 feet long, I believe, and the water is just absolutely perfect in it. We spent the rest of that evening at the hot springs, and we found a place to camp real close to there, and we were by ourselves most of the time too, so we could really enjoy this hot springs a lot. We used it the next morning until about noon, and then it was time we had to start moving on. There's some of the sunstones down in Nevada someplace, but I forgot where they were, and we never brought our information with us. So we're going to go down to Wells and see if we can find someone that knows. It wasn't easy to pull Marge away from this nice, hot, steaming, clear, crystal clear water, but we have to be going. The sunflowers are blooming really good around the edge of this hot stream as we prepare to head out. There are a couple places where we have to ford this little creek. It's called 12-Mile Creek, which is warm, and so we just ease through it. As long as it's not flood conditions or something, it's no problem, but if the water gets high, it could be a dangerous place to cross. And then down past the old bridge and the irrigation system, which is no longer used to fill the head gates to fill the ditch, since they're pumping the water directly out of the creek down below in the ranch land. Then another place where we have to ford 12-Mile Creek. It's a little longer and a little deeper here, but still no real problem. We found some watercress growing at a little spring that comes out and runs right down across the road. I never could resist getting some nice fresh watercress, so Marge will pick us a little bit of watercress so we can have it for a salad or a sandwich or something later on today. Then down below we see the circular pivot irrigation systems going round and around the field as they pump the water out of this warm water out of this hot springs creek. Then down to Wells, Wells has pretty much died, particularly since they put the new highway in. The old part of town has pretty much died, and they build up a little bit of the new part of town out near the new highway. There's still sort of a museum and a visitor center downtown Wells, so we'll go there and see if we can find out about the sunstones and look their exhibits over a little bit. There's an old sheep wagon. Marge likes sheep wagons. And an old stagecoach. All painted up real nice. And then a medicine wagon and ambulance. We're heading out now. We left Wells and we went on down to Austin, Nevada. There are numerous hot springs come right out in the desert out here by Austin, Nevada. So we'll go out and see what we can find. Wow, what a beautiful evening with the moon rising over the hill just to the east of us. These hot springs were okay, but it was real bright sunlight, and also there was no shade at all out here, and then it's such easy access that all the great big motor homes started coming in, and they were camping right on the edge of the hot springs. That seems to me like that's pretty rude to do that, like claiming the hot springs for their very own. There's one pool built of stones with a little deck around it, and that's really pretty nice. But then when the motor homes came, it wasn't so nice with them backing right up against it. It even has a valve on it where you can regulate the temperature somewhat. So we used it for a while. There were plenty of birds and friendly jackrabbits right around the hot springs area. There were plenty of stock tanks around. Wherever a little hot springs come gurgling out of the ground, someone had moved a stock tank in and piped the water over to it. And you can even regulate the temperature somewhat in these stock tank hot pools, where they're pretty nice. This hot springs was just okay. I don't think I would really recommend it very strongly to anyone else, just because of the ease of access and all the motorhome people are coming in. We looked up on the hill beyond the hot springs, and here were a couple antelope coming in pretty fast. They like to get in and chew the tender young grasses on the overflow to the hot springs, and also water and get their minerals there. This one antelope is a buck, and an absolutely huge one. He's got the biggest horns I think I've ever seen on an antelope. I guess maybe that hot springs material makes for big horns. He's really a giant buck, and I don't know whether they have any antelope season here or not, but they may not have, or maybe don't let out many permits for this area, or that guy surely wouldn't have grown such large horns. His real long horns